JJ, welcome.
Salute, buddy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I keep saying this table is like 6 inches too long because you got to like stand up to toast across the thing.
Nah, you got to put effort into it.
Which makes it worth it. All right, well, welcome, JJ. You are on deck.
All right.
And if I think my first introduction to you, my first memory of you was your commercials for World Ford, and that had to be, could that have been 15 to 20 years ago?
I would say that was, let me think, so 96, maybe 95, 96.
I mean, something like that.
Yeah, that would make it right. I think my kids were 5 and 4 when I was at World Ford. So yeah, it would have been like 95. So
you came down to Florida to work with, were you with Group 1 before that, or you came here?
No, so interesting. I had a prior life in Houston, moved to Houston. I was super young.
Right.
Ended up back in Ohio, my hometown. Became a Toyota dealer there.
Youngstown, right?
Youngstown. Bought my first store in Toyota Youngstown. The only one I could possibly get the capital together to buy in this little teeny town. Anyway, that morphed into another deal in Pittsburgh, which was another Toyota store, a little bigger deal. And we'd outgrown that into all this, time in my life. I then had 2 kids. So kind of outgrew the house and outgrew the business. I had a opportunity on this 25-acre piece of property. I had to build a new Toyota dealership. Anyway, I was at this point where I grew up bouncing around, right? School to school and so on. And as a dad, I'm like, I'm not going to do that, man. Like, my kids are going to go from kindergarten to high school and have that perfect run. And I say perfect, I don't know if it's perfect yet, but
right, but
anyway,
consistent.
Let's call it how I would like things to have been, and somewhat envious of like, your buddies you played Little League with, now you're playing high school football with and shit like that. So I was really committed to that no matter what. And so as I have blueprints, for this, building and so on. And I remember telling my wife at the time, I'm like, look, we actually had improvements for the house, a big addition, and the store. And I said, if I build this store and do these improvements, this is where we're going to raise the kids. So.
And this was Pittsburgh?
This was Youngstown, commuting to Pittsburgh. Okay. Yeah. My dad was in Florida. I liked Florida, didn't know much about it. And so we came to Florida. She spooked. And I said, all right, then let's go home. Let's put a shovel in the ground. Let's take this next chapter. And then about a month later, winter started to set in, and it started snowing and sideways, and put it back on the table and made a decision and came to Florida without a job, really. And
oh, really?
Now I backed into geography. I'm like, okay, where do we want to go? In a business that I'm in, there's always a deal if you're good at what you do. And came to Florida, went to West Palm and stuff, didn't like anything there, ended up in Weston, and like, this is a really cool place to raise my kids, just the community, the schools, all of it. And I bought a house the first day because I'm like, see this guy, and I don't know nothing about this. I come from a market, where your house takes a year to sell, and
right.
I said, I like this. I'm gonna fly my wife down, and we're gonna, we'll check it out again. He's like, this house will be gone by 5, if I could just buy the house. And I didn't know much about Group 1's presence, but I had a guy by the name of Kevin Whalen, who I'd kind of grown up in the business with. He was one of the co-founders, so I rang him up and said, man, what do you guys got going on? I'm moving to Florida. So I was moving to Florida. And he said, man, we got some really, tough stores there. Fly to Houston and let's talk about it. He was on the board. Anyway, we put that together, and I became an operator for Group 1 based out of, Florida, right next to Weston, and then was committed to doing my thing. Got the kids in the right school, and ironically, like, to finish, to circle it all, to tie it up, is 3 years into it, 2.5, 3 years into it, I get a call from, corporate there at Group 1, and they said, let's get together. At the time, Earl Hesterberg, who's still the CEO, wants to sit with you. And I remember saying jokingly, look, if he wants to blow me out, just do it over the phone. Don't make me come to Houston. So I get there, and I go into his office, and the HR director's there, who I knew relatively well from a prior life. I'm like, come on, guys. There's HR there, and there's at the time the senior vice president and the CEO. And he said, man, we got great news. You've done such a really great job, and we love our partnership and so on. So we're gonna promote you and transfer you to LA. And I'm like, no, we're not. And I, immediately I thought, that's not my plan. My plan then, when my kids would be in sixth grade, and we'd transfer them. And so I said, I'm not doing it. I can just tell you right now, I'm not going to think about it. There's nothing to think about. I'm not doing it. I said, well, we're going to sell our stores in Florida, and so you'll be left to, fend for yourself. And I'm like, whatever. But, first grade through senior in high school, and I'm not moving to turn from that plan. And anyway, it's another topic, but, I got off the plane, and I drove by Rick Case and saw the sign, and I happened to have Rick's number on my phone, because I had a radio show, back in the day, and Rick was my first guest, and then he became like the production manager of the show. He called me first thing in the morning. Go, what are we going to talk about today? I'm like, we're going to talk about this. Nah, I don't like that. Nobody cares about that. And
oh, really?
Oh my God! And then he'd call me after the show and say, that thing you said about hybrids, that's wrong. That's inaccurate. Because he just he was so on point.
Right? Like Rick was so into the details on stuff that I think people would be surprised about.
He read automotive news cover to cover, 3 times. He knew, he was so relevant. And then so it morphed into this, like, I wouldn't even call it a friendship. Like, it was just this bizarre, like, I felt bad. Like, oh shit, I got to change my topic, So,
but it was your show.
It was my show.
Yeah, it was Real Talk. What was it?
It was called The Real Deal.
Real Deal with JJ.
And it was candid, direct automotive advice.
I remember. Yeah.
And that actually, was a cool story. That I was flying back and forth working for your dad, and I was going back and forth to Atlanta, and I'd come back on Friday nights, and you'd sit next to a guy, and what do you do? I'm a car dealer. Oh, my daughter's a lease. And she's like, I ain't telling nobody, because everybody got a story or whatever.
Right.
So I'd tell people I paint houses, or whatever. So I got home, and I was talking to my wife, and I said, man, there's just like, everybody wants to know, make great radio content. And so I started just, scratching some shit down, and, then I went and pitched it, to at the time 790, here in the market. Mm-hmm. And I said, and I had this whole model around it, how car dealers would come on as guests, and then the salespeople could be there, and they could have an intimate meeting with them, and so on. So for me, the money was coming from the residual of selling the radio. They paid me a little bit to do the show. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it was a great model. And then I got a call from QAM. They gave me 2 hours, and it was really cool. But Rick was my first guest, and then then I had Rita on the show, and she did like women in the car business and buying and so on. But that all came from just a thought of like, there's a need for this. And 2 weeks later, I'm in that that light comes on and it says on the air. I'm like, yep. Holy shit, what did I do? But it was a lot of fun. And my son started playing football on Saturday mornings, and the show was Saturday morning. I said, all right, this is over. I ain't doing this no more. And so we just
so you were able to accomplish that goal of settling your family down and having them make the full run in Weston. Like, did they go?
Yeah. So I literally we got off topic. I got off the plane. I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to be unemployed here in a couple of weeks.
Right.
And I didn't leave the meeting extremely friendly. Earl is a Ford guy, and he's used to saying, your check will be in Illinois next week, so pack it up. So anyway, our relationship got strained right at that meeting. Mm-hmm. So I'm coming over the bridge to my house, and I'm looking, there's brick case signs from left to right, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I'm coming over the bridge on my way home, and I dialed up Rick, and I said, I'd like to have a coffee with you. And anyway, we sat down, and he had some goals that he needed called support with. In other words, things he'd like to have done if he had, the infrastructure in place, and it sounded perfect. And we ended up having 12 years together, and I got to, I never moved. I literally moved from the house I bought originally 2 miles down the road, as the kids got older and I wanted a bigger house. But no, I was able to accomplish that, and even through a couple bumps in the road. But yeah, they went from, and they have exactly what I talked about. They got buddies, he's got buddies, and my daughter got friends that they went to first grade with. So, which is cool.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing to accomplish in the retail car business, because I was talking to somebody about this the other day. it's such a meritocracy, right? And how you advance through the business is, putting in the work, putting in the effort, but a lot of times it requires recognizing, well, there's a better opportunity here. And so a lot of guys and men and women in the business end up moving all over the place, and there's like that sort of transient vagabond thing that starts to happen to a lot of people because they're 2 years at this store, then they move here and they move there, and that's a tough thing to put kids through.
Yeah, it's I think some of it is like how we feel like it's supposed to be to chase that next deal, and I'm going to leave when I get this. And I learned a lot through that. Like, is now things like manifestation are like, more exposed, and how people think and perceive that and how that works. I realized right then I manifested that whole thing, from I'm going to be in this school district for 12 years and so on. And the thing of Group 1, like I just saw past it, like, this isn't the plan, and the plan stayed in place, and I just overcame the things. And I think a lot of people in our business don't do that. They, if things don't feel right, instead of working through it and leaning into it, they bail, or they just chase, what it seems like, and you've been a car business, that next opportunity isn't, you create the damn opportunity in front of you. That next opportunity usually don't work out. And people tell me that, and I go, you'll be back, and I'm not going to hire you back because this is not what you should be doing. Right.
There's something to be said for that. You get yourself in a situation, and the grass can always seem greener on the other side, but it really isn't, and to be able to work and push through, some of those tougher times in the same deal, right? To the point where you get and you realize that you created it yourself you created your results by hanging in and doing the same thing and just continuing to master that environment and those relationships with those people,
Well, when you inked up in a deal, you had an ambition of where you wanted it to go.
Right.
So if you're leaving, it didn't go there. Or if you're looking to, bail, it didn't go there, and pretty much you just give up on it because there's a lot of options too, and this business provides a whole bunch of options, and a lot of times management and even, dealers are on the same page, just change and change and change, and, it goes against the grain of how I've run businesses, and, I'm about retention, rebuild, and there's not movie stars and, first round draft picks out there looking for a job.
Right.
So I gave up on that model a long time ago. An NFL team gets one pick in the first round, and maybe, and then one in the second. So when they come away with 3 or 4 good players, and they got to make a team out of it. So that's always made sense to me.
Yeah, you got to fill it in. And so, and it's interesting because you made this commitment to, okay, we're going to be here, we're going to raise our family here. It didn't work out with Group 1, and then you have what many in the business would consider the dream opportunity. To be able to go work for Rick and Rita, and I don't mean to say that just so light, but within the Rick Case organization, which is one of the premier organizations in the country, in one of the premier markets in the country, to be able to go and absorb yourself and fully commit yourself into that, it's such an incredible opportunity.
It was so different than what I thought it would be. I was at that point 20 years in the business, been a dealer, was with Group 1 running multiple stores. I think at one time I had like 9 stores or whatever. And so I was a hot shot, and I went to work for Rick to run his life work, right? And I had no idea. So like day one, I'm like, all right, let's rock and roll. What we're going to do. And he's like, you're not getting the keys to this company for a long time. And I learned, I'm the guy, the operator I am today. I attribute, 90% of it to him. So I went back to school. Completely back to school on, one, it was, how to run a company that big. I remember, multiple things I learned from him, but like we'd have meetings and I have a legal pad, and that's how I did shit. He goes, you're not running my company from a legal pad. Here's how you're going to do it. Here's how you're going to be organized. Here's how you organize your day. And that just was many of things I learned from him. But, I sat shoulder to shoulder with him, trying to beat him to work, trying to stay later than him I was there 12 years for the first 3, almost 4. And he just gave me a crumb of something I would really conquer, and then another piece and another level of responsibility. But then I realized, after a while, this was the process of someone really getting comfortable with giving you their life's work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't say giving it to me. I don't think ever, didn't sign off on it, but
turning over the operation of something so meaningful.
Everything, one, not just that it's a monster, but then being someone's, started on a used car lot, with one car on the front to what he had created. Unlike a public company, right, where that's just like, these are your 6 stores, go do your thing.
Right.
This was a whole nother, level of learning, and so many things I still do today. I mean, a lot of things, how I think, how I look through a problem. He, I go on and on, but I mean, he just, no was legit. He lived, all this shit you see, these motivational things. He lived it, like, no don't mean no, and no is not going to mean no. And it's like, persistence removes resistance was like one of many things that, and I don't take no for an answer. And when I lean back in that, I know, I kind of always thought I was, like I said, I went back to school with him completely. Mm-hmm. Not just how I thought about work, but Rick lived a life of like, I'm gonna manifest how I want this to be. I'm gonna think, and there's nothing to get in my damn way. And and the obstacles were huge. I saw us overcome. The open points we were able to obtain against big. But I don't think when we went into, let's say, pitching a big open point, Volkswagen was one of my favorite stories. But there was ever a doubt in his mind we were going to get the point. I don't think he ever thought like, I think this we're going to work out, or maybe it does, or I hope we get it. Like,
he always knew.
He already had the building planned. He already was planning the grand opening. I mean, we're pitching the deal, and he's producing the commercials. So, a monster version of like me keeping my kids in school for 12 months. That was how he approached everything.
Did he have? Was he just so organized and planned, and so much further down the road than most people in terms of his commitment to making something happen, is that what gave him the confidence, or was he just that way?
Well, he was textbook workaholic, but I learned a lot about that as well. Like, it was his company. Like, he was like, you have here, like, he just, he couldn't get enough of it, and his name on every building, and he felt that need for growth and so on. But I think it was a combination, but he put a lot of pressure on himself, like, until he passed. I mean, we spoke when Rick was he was sick. I didn't know he was sick, but I think he passed, right in the middle of COVID, let's say. And I was doing stuff with him during COVID, and now thinking about him and his state of mind, knowing, even his days were, numbered. We were talking about strategy and COVID. We were talking about how we were going to close this. He called me and said, if I close on Sunday, will you close on Sunday? And I'm going to call the other dealers and see if they'll close on Sunday. We can save a few bucks. And, what are we going to do with inventory and so on? And to think about that, like, you probably, knew it was, the months were ticking by. And, and that's how he approached everything, the persistent part of it, like in the successful part of it, to frame out just that thinking, he had a record of being number 1 dealer the very first month he opened.
Like on every store
everything he ever opened. So we're going to open Honda. We're going to be the number 1 dealer in the country, in the United States. 2 weeks ago, we didn't have a car, right? And that became a thing, and he never missed it. So whatever huge obstacles there were, right, he didn't miss it. And where there was like, it makes no sense, the Volkswagen, we're out to sell everybody in the world, Maserati, the very first month we opened, there's still, the paint's still wet, right? And we opened Fiat, and he was, out of town for, he used to spend some summers in Colorado. And so I am opening this new Fiat store, and he's just hammering me like, don't mess up my record. Don't do it. Don't do it. And we had Smart Car in there. We had 30 days to open Fiat. So we had to destroy Smart Car. We had to image the Fiat store, complete remodel, and open in 30 days. So that in itself was like, he goes, look, we have a grand opening party. I got the invitations. It's on July 1, so you have to be done. I would have never put that pressure on myself. I would have pushed, right? But he was all about setting a date, putting that date on a calendar. And this is the commercial that's going to run to our grand opening. I've already produced it, and it's going to run July 2. And then we're going to be number one dealer in the country the first month we open. We're clear on that, right? Again, there was a dealer in Austin that was already selling 100 cars a month, like for a long time. They were number one in the country, and I'm like, he's gonna be pissed if we don't. And so I had seen enough of it, so I was bought in, I guess, per se, right? And the day of the party, we had a press party the night before we opened, and they came out to do the CO, and we're hiding wires, and we're like the bathroom water and doing stuff like that we wouldn't have done. We would have let it be 3, 4, 5 more days, or who knows how long.
Right.
And then it was number one in the country. You only get a chance to do that, to be number one in the country the first month you're open one time, right?
Right.
And the cars came, and there was they come from Italy, and there was a patch cord that had to go from the laptop to basically what they called wake up the car, right? Because they shipped them shut down, right? So you had to go on this laptop, and I never did it, but and basically bring the car, electronically to life, right? Okay. So we get our first load of cars, man, we're out there and we're ready to we got ads going, we're going to be number one in the country. And the cars get there, we don't have the cord. So we had like people waiting to test drive, and there's none out there. So we find a cord, I think it was Atlanta, and the option was obviously to overnight it to us and something could go wrong there. And we put a guy in a car and said, you drive to Atlanta and you get that cord and you be back in the morning, whatever it was.
Right.
And none of that comes into play if you're not committed to this thing, right? Like, we can't lose a day. And when we were slow, we had cars in front of Publix, and we were number one in the country the first month we opened. And I learned so much about myself. I would have never put that on myself. I would have never said and committed to it, like been legit. Like it would have been maybe, let's try to kick some butt and outsell everybody, but truly committed. Like putting a guy in a damn car and drive back. And there were many things like that, multiple things like that happened. And we just never, it was like, well, we're going to do it, So we'd sell 3 cars and Austin would sell 4. And then we'd see it the next day on the report, and we'd figure, how do we catch up that one car? And, the last day of the month till 4 o'clock in the morning, we outsold everybody. And I was like, wow, man, I would have never, ever done that. I would have said it, I would have tried.
Right.
But like, non-negotiable, this is what we're going to do. It would have started with the FedEx on the patch cord and just been,
all little, just little areas where
there were so many reasons why we shouldn't have done it, or we could have leaned in on like we did, but then the cord didn't come. We lost 4 days, and and then this ad didn't run, and none of that really mattered. We're going to be number one in the country, and so that was Rick. That's what I took away from it. With the last text I sent to him. And it's enjoyable talking about this because, I think about it all the time. But the very last text I sent to him that was probably 2 weeks before he passed was a completely unrelated situation where I was involved in a real estate deal, and I was up against the wall. Completely shut down. The story's long, but basically it was like, you're not going to get this done. There's no way you're going to get this done. And I just manipulated the situation to where I could get in front of somebody, and I knew if I can get in front of somebody, I could then, have a stage, and if I had the stage, I could, even if my time was short. And anyway, I got it done. And the very first thing I did when I got to parking lot was text him. And I said, persistence removes resistance. Once again, I just accomplished this thing, and I wouldn't have done it without you in the back of my mind. And that was the last time I communicated with him, a couple of weeks before that. And getting that done was something that had just now become part of me, and like, okay, I just give me a crack. Let me get in the door. Let me, and how do I do that? And the story is a 3 beer story some other day, but it's a good one. And and he said something like, great, and I realized later he was 2 weeks away from passing.
Yeah, it's amazing. The one thing along those lines that I've learned is that there's always a way. Like no matter how fucked up things seem, or if it seems like the odds are totally against you, there is always,
if you believe
a way, right?
If you believe that, and you just you look at the obstacles like, okay, I knew that was coming. Like it wasn't just going to be easy. And like the thing with Group 1 and, and being out of a job, and I never really panicked about it. I kind of just, it's almost like saying it's in God's hands, but it was part of my manifestation. I'm like, this ain't, okay, all right, there's a little bit of pain in the ass, to get through this, but I'm not considering going to California.
Right.
You know, it wasn't even a thought. You know, he's like, go home and think about it. I'm thinking about it. I don't want to waste your time. We're not, no disrespect, but it's just not in my plan.
Yeah. Well, I must say thank you. As a result of you, I had the opportunity to work with Rick. You know, my fledgling little business years ago, you know, in our old location, you know, you reached out, and then I came in and pitched. I still remember I was wearing like a pinstripe suit, yellow tie, pitched, and we ended up doing all the newspaper ads for your organization. You know,
you have no idea how big that of accomplishment you did by doing that. I mean, one, marketing was as precious to him as anything he did, and he prided himself on that. And then the newspaper was his first line, because of course business started that way. So now thinking about that, like, and he liked you, and he gave you some autonomy, which is, you have no idea how big. Now that I think about it, because I was kind of in the heart of it too, you know, when you got that account, but that was huge.
Well, yeah, thanks for saying that, and it feels good to hear that. And I think back to that time, and what a cool thing it was for me and for us, and you know, my crew at the time, because I mean, you know, some people might think that a guy like Rick Case is removed from that kind of stuff. I mean, we literally were on the phone with Rick 24 times every single week or more, and going over the very little. I mean, there was probably 10, 15, 20 print ads a week going out of our shop, you know, all for Rick Case around the different markets. And Rick was into the details of every single thing. Like he loved it, because he was like a sales and marketing, not like I said, he was a sales and marketing guy, in my opinion, and he loved it. But I mean, right down to, you know, $3,000 off, the way you write it, the way you position the verbiage, and the way you use all the space. He was so into the details. It was really, and we'd be on the phone with him up until, like, you know, Thursday night, 8, 9 o'clock, making the final adjustments every single week.
And if you had a period in the wrong place in a disclaimer in the mouse, he's going to find it. And that was it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, him and Rita both used the word "devil's in the details," and just wasn't a skimmer. And I would say to him, nobody reads this. You know, we're putting this in the ad. Nobody reads. I read it, and then I realized he's not the only one that reads it. Like, there are people that do
Sure.
that. You know, I'm horrible at skimming, like really, really bad, and it's got me in, you know, a lot of trouble. In
the legal document scan, where you're just like,
it's more like a text from somebody, or, you know, or whatever. But he again, hearing you say that, like, I forgot. And I know he was rough. We'd have those meetings, conference rooms, and he was never like, people took him as a mean guy, you know, like, but it wasn't mean. He just, the passion created frustration.
Yeah.
But it was never bad intended, you know. And he spent a lot of time apologizing for allowing his passion to just make you feel belittled, or make you feel like, you know, like, what are you thinking? You know, like, he just. But
it's, I get, I mean, and I was on the receiving end of that on a number of different occasions, but I never felt like, oh man, you know, it was just, you just realize this is a man who takes what he's doing extremely seriously, and he's expecting you to be at the level that he needs you to be.
Well, you took it the right way.
Yeah.
That's why you're doing what you're doing. You know, like, you know, either you did that or you crumbled, because the intensity to get it right was like, some people were checked out. I'm like, I can't operate in this, you know, in this space. So I gotta dial it. Like,
I was fortunate enough in my years coming up, particularly through Zimmerman, of being exposed to a lot of, you know, really intense operators and some just outright lunatics, right? But even the lunatics, you know, were the ones that you just learned so much from, because they were so crazy focused on, you know, the important details for them advertising and marketing their business, that you just, yeah, sometimes you fucking hated it. But at the end of the day, I look back at those relationships, and I'm like, man, they were so valuable. You know, like the people who, I call them tormentors. You know, I've always had a tormentor or two in my life. Right, somebody who's just like, you're like, man, is it ever gonna not be miserable with this person? But it's always for a good cause. And Rick was that way to a degree.
Yeah, it's just who he was, you know. And once I got to know him, and I realized it wasn't. So I always look for the lesson in the, you know, in the madness. Sometimes, you know, there was still a lesson there, even when he was, you know, especially that. But and you know, those I wouldn't call them relationship, but that interaction and relationships, you know, that's become part of your DNA now. You know, like it has mine. So, and you curve it and you make it your own, but so many, things, and with other people along the way. But because that was so current and it was so flippin' intense, it was anything we did was intense. Out to dinner was intense. It was, we'd go to dinner and, we'd leave with 3-4 leads, and it was every time. And it became, it's like, these cards that were referral cards. They called my customer, my friend. And so the waiter would come over, and Rick was, dialed in. Everybody would buy a car if the price was right. Everybody needs a car, everybody drives a car. So the waiter would get a little schooling right then and say, listen, I'm going to give you 3 of these. And between the cook and your coworkers and so on, I need to, find out who'd be interested in a car. I'll call them myself. I'm Rick Case, and name and I think email and phone number, whatever. And if you get these back to me, the more you get back to me, the bigger your tip's going to be. And there was never a time, ever, where he didn't walk out of there, right, and then we get in a car and he'd give them to me and he'd say, have somebody get in touch with these people. And I don't think there was ever a time we went out to dinner and we didn't leave with leads.
Now, I listen to that and I hear that and I go, fuck, I'm falling short in so many. Right.
Well, you make you feel like a dummy, and the next thing you're trying to do it.
But it's just like, it's the core, basic, fundamental effort of running a sales operation to some degree that requires you to do that kind of shit, right?
Well, prospecting and yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's how he thought. Like Rick, when we'd be in a store, and I really love that we've stayed on this topic, but we'd be in a store, one of our stores, and the guy would be there filling the Coke machine. And it'd be like, he's driving something. Has anybody talked to him? Has anybody talked to him about what he's driving, what his payments are? I'm like, no. But then you talk to 5 vending machine guys, and next thing you know, you're making a damn car deal.
Right.
And that's part of and I still work that way, and I still teach that way, and I still coach that way. Like there's just business all around you. And I was able to, he broadened the scope of that, and you looked at everybody like, I could sell them a car, and but yeah, that, and we'd leave, honest to God, we'd leave with sometimes 5, whatever, and I got to imagine over a career of doing that, it'd be, statistically, there's hundreds of cars that were sold from waiters giving him, and that was everybody, the valet guy, it didn't matter, and the other part of being that successful is you have to have no shame.
Right.
you just can't be insulted, and you can't be like,
you can't be shy about it. You're all the time.
And sometimes, Rick would, in a certain situation, like he was cute about, like, where it just like he kind of overstepped it a little bit, and he'd say, I'm just an old car salesman. And that just was the excuse for whatever.
There's your disclaimer.
Right. Yeah,
right?
It was a disclaimer.
And that makes it okay.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just an old car salesman.
Right.
I'm just trying to sell some cars.
I'm curious, you've, if I recall correctly, you've primarily operated in 3 markets. Let's call it, Northeast Ohio to Pittsburgh, Houston, Florida. Is that correct?
No,
for the bulk of your time.
Houston was, my breakout. I grew up in a steel town, and right at that time, all the steel business had been taken overseas, and people that were like steel workers with benefits and retirement, and we're now getting jobs at McDonald's and stuff. It was really, really bad. And I had no interest in higher education or anything like that. So I literally had a guy that I knew through somebody else send me a newspaper, right? So this is, back in the day, send me a classified, and I went through the classified, and I'd grown up around my dad was had a used car lot that I grew up on. And I went through it, and I founded a Toyota store looking for a used car salesman, and I fudged it and packed up a couple boxes and flew to Houston, and I was 17. Yeah, I was 17, stayed on my buddy's couch, and wore the same shirt to work for, day after day after day. And so Houston was and it was a big, big city.
Right.
I'm coming from this little town, this big city. And so anyway, I went from that to a better sales job, to then a better sales job, and then to a management job. And by the time I left Houston, I was running a dealer group with 4 stores. So that was about an 11-year period. And through just, complete tunnel vision and didn't have much of a, other going on. That was my primary focus every day. And then I decided at that point, I want to do my own deal and, my own creativity and my own culture. And I ironically was back in Ohio visiting, and which I did quite a bit. And then saw this little teeny Toyota store and looked like they had about 3 cars. And so I made a connection because I had all these incredible connections. I'm running one of the largest Toyota stores in the country in Houston, so I knew everybody. And I remember calling a guy by the name of Marv Rivers. And I'm like, Marv, listen, I'm in my hometown, this little store. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's, the store sold, 27 cars last year or something. And what are you doing? And so, but I had all these incredible network connections all the way to California because of what I was doing. So they helped me put it together. And I borrowed all the money, all the money. And so that was me back in Ohio. And then from there, I was in Pittsburgh, and that was about 6 years. And then I told you that's how we ended up in Florida. So that was kind of the progression.
Was there, between these, let's call it these 3 regions, right? Was there a discernible difference in the market? Like what was Houston like? Was there something different? Or when you got to Florida, were you like, whoa, it's a different game down here?
It was different in 2 ways. One, it was where I was in my career, right? So I'm in Houston, and I'm measuring everything off of what I'm doing there. And then I'm engulfed in this culture of I'm wearing cowboy boots and country music. And I love, Houston is, in my blood forever. I mean, I have friends there, and I really, really love it there. And I grew up in the car business there, right? So that was one piece. Then I go back to a steel town, right? That is, 10 years before that, if you owned a Volkswagen, you come out of a restaurant, it was on its roof, they were anti anything but, apple pie and Chevrolet, right? Yep. So and we did a hell of a job there. So I learned how to sell, and there was a lot of misconceptions. This Camry's built in Kentucky, and there was no cars being imported at that time. So I learned that in a really small store. So I went from having 400 employees to having, 12. And so that was a different run. And then Pittsburgh became a whole different deal, another market. Pittsburgh and that part of the country is completely different. And they have their culture, 20 miles away, 30 miles away to where I was in Ohio. There was words we used that they didn't use, and there was so that was learning in itself, learning that culture as well. And then Florida, the only Hispanic people I knew were Puerto Rican, before I came to Florida, and so this was, I remember going to that Ford store that I ended up working, that was my corporate office. And it was bigger than anything I ever seen. It was a whole city block.
The thing was huge.
I think like 3,000 cars in stock. And that was another one of them oh wow moments, like, holy shit. And I realized though, without a lot of, personal horn tooting here, I realized I was ready for this, because of Houston, because of, these small stores. It came easier to me than I thought, and I think here, I was able to do better because the work ethic was a little bit less at the time. And, but, again, it was kind of going back to school. I never had a domestic brand, was a Toyota guy for years now, selling Fords and things like that. So it was Florida was another big learning curve. And it's really where all my tools came together. The time I'd spent in Texas and then being a dealer and so on. So it was where I was now, I had my master's, let's say, and we started so I had tremendous success with Group 1, and so I didn't want to give me that BS promotion, and in Florida in general. So, and I think it was a part of big opportunity, big stores, and if you can sell 4 cars to 6 people, you can sell 400 cars to 600 people,
right.
And I really realized my worth and how far I had come when I got to Florida. I'm really rocking and rolling in this big ass market with all this competition. And so it was an opportunity for me to build my confidence and really realize, until you get out there and you're involved in something like that, you have no idea.
In our business, I'm sure in every business, but in our business, you hear the term passion tossed around quite a bit amongst men and women that are successful and that they have a real passion and a drive for the business. And over your career in these different stages, what was the passion for you? Is that an accurate word?
The money, man. I grew up pretty poor, and I liked nice stuff, and I wanted to have, for me, life in general has been, I had, great parents, but my parents were super young when I was born and so on, and and my dad was a mechanic, and so our life was below even average as far as just economically and so on, plenty of love, but I wanted the money. I wanted to make money. I wanted to be able to go buy a boat. I wanted to be able to live in a great house. And so I was never like, I could have been passionate about whatever I did. I don't think I was ever, maybe still not, like passionate about the car business. I was passionate about finding something I was good at it,
right,
and then just leaning into it hard. It wasn't about cars, and people, I love cars, and I grew up around cars, and I realized I was really good with people, and motivating them and giving them the support. I didn't realize what it was. I went, and I've spoke on this, like I had all this success, right, like especially in the last 15 years, and I used to just think, oh man, I'm freaking lucky, man. Like every time I go on these deals, like we just rock and roll like it. They must have been right on the cusp, And so I realized it was a culture I was bringing to these places. I didn't even know what, I didn't even know what that meant. That culture meant food, whatever, right? And once I identified it, and I was able to then just start to, max it out, like what I'm bringing here is, when I read about, let's say, a merit-based culture, I realized I was doing 7 of the 10 things. And didn't even realize it just was my DNA, right? And so that became like, I can do this anywhere, really. I mean, if I was running at Coca-Cola, I think I would be able to succeed. And now, obviously, I know our industry, and I learned our industry, but it was the money, and then it became the money. And when I say the money, it was just that semi-financial freedom, that way of raising my kids. My kids both just graduated from college with no debt. I mean, no, that's good stuff, you know. And then it became lately, because I'm doing stuff I hadn't done, and my office is right on the showroom floor. Now you've seen my office. Sure. My office years ago was, you couldn't find me. They had security and and so on, and the key to get in, and so on.
The retina scan.
Right. Yeah. So I ended up back on the showroom, interacting with young salespeople, young managers. When I left, the case organization, there were a lot of people that had, over the years, I brought into there. And, one of the things, with my relationship with the case and so on, I left and got back in the car business. I said, I'm not going to take any people, even people that I trained and cultivated over the years. I thought, what, they're there, they're part of that company now. And so I stepped aside for really a year. I took almost a year off from our industry, and then when I came back, I had made not just my commitment to them, because sometimes it was tough because there were people I would have liked to have, but was to start over and to start to cultivate a new following, a new group of people that would be loyal to me and that would think I was a somewhat of a mentor and taught them and so on. And so the people that I had at Rick Case they had the house, and now they had the kids in the neighborhood they wanted to, and they were getting there. So starting with people that hadn't done that, a lot of them, has been, so now it's, I'll still go to work for the money. If I hit the Powerball, I'm not going to post. I'm going to tell you right now, at least for a while. But in and out to people, I get a lot, the customers, I was so far removed from customers. So my relationship with Kenny, the guy I work with now, is a different relationship, and he's, I am creating the culture in the company. He's giving, and that's where I am in my career. Like I love this thing we have, but I got to really have an opportunity to kind of make it my own. And we're both at a different place in our life. So now I'm creating, a culture that I'm really proud of, and I'm training people and working with people, and we're still, doing our best to max out the money as well, but. So now it's become the people. But no, I was never passionate. I was passionate about work, and my work ethic.
And this was passionate about the fact that this was an opportunity that you were able to use your skills to succeed and earn.
It's how you got there. So how I got there was, I wasn't, I was doing cement work, right? I knew I wasn't going to do that, and so at the time, my mom had met a guy, and they were in Houston for a while. She ended up going back to Ohio, her husband, and he was a car salesman, and he had nice shit, right? He had a freaking boat, a kick-ass boat, and a cool house and, and just the clothes he wanted and shit. And so, and I could hustle him. So like, if, I was living in his house and shit, and I could hustle him. I could get over on him. I could con him, for little shit, whatever,
right.
Whatever, I wasn't embezzling from him. I knew I could, my personality and my game, I could hustle him. And so that was it. That was my motivation. I'm like, I can hustle him.
And he's got this.
And he's the number one Porsche Audi salesman in the United States. And he got all this going on in his life. So there I go. And that's how I started selling cars. From my father I had, but he was, was different. He was just, he had a little cool used car lot, and that vision wasn't there. He was still going home and and working on cars in the garage and so on. So, but when I saw Robert, and I thought, all right, well there it is. And that's how it happened. If he was doing something else, and I thought I could hustle him, I probably would have done something else. If he was selling knives or or whatever. But it was that simple. So it was just the tool,
right,
to get the money,
to get the stuff, the money and the stuff. I'm curious, because you run, Coral Springs Auto Mall, big operation, right? Not case size of operation, but big operation. But what I'm really curious about is you are front line for a lot of new people coming into the business, right? It's safe to say.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you see the same? I'm always curious. Do you see the same type of drive and determination and desire in the people that are coming into the business now?
I'm going to say, and go against the grain of probably how most people answer it. I'm going to say yes, but I think it's a byproduct of me sifting through it, having a high level of what it takes, and really being non-negotiable on the difference. So I've been able to and it's been almost 3.5 years,
yeah.
But the people that are there, yeah, I mean, they're on point, they're hungry. But I only need X amount of them, right? So I've been able to cultivate those people and hire those people and so on. But I know there's a lot of that out there, let's say, that's different, motivation's different. And I'm sure at some level I don't know a lot of that. I mean, I know there's sometimes a guy would rather have a day off than a $100 bonus or whatever.
Right.
I get that. But no, not so much. But it's probably just, they don't even make it to my level, right? They, maybe my HR team screens them or whatever, the people that I go after. But there's still a lot of, in our business, there's still a lot of hungry guys, especially the ones that are even, either they've been in it a long time or they're around people that are doing it. But I would say our business has held up the grit pretty well.
Good. That's encouraging. I like hearing that and knowing that, to know that there's subsequent generations coming into the business that are still have the the drive and the desire to succeed.
It's all the competition.
Yeah.
If you don't, I don't know, there's I'm a Honda dealer, there's probably 10 that you could drive to.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as there's that competition in our industry, and the only thing that separates us from the other Honda store is us, because the cars cost the same,
right.
They're all the same color, so if you don't have that grit and you're not hungry, you just get eaten up.
For those that are listening or watching, may not totally realize, but, Coral Springs Auto Mall, you're running one of the largest Honda dealers in the country, Honda stores in the country. Currently the largest number one Nissan dealer in the country, right?
Yeah.
Large Kia, Buick GMC, and a big used car operation. So you're front and center of really highly performing organization. I would be willing to bet that a lot of people would like to know, like, where do you, from your vantage point, where do you see the business going? Is, the online retailing and transaction piece, is that as big a deal as everybody thinks it is from a technology side? I'm just curious, like, where you see this all going, being so involved as you are right now.
Well, it's been bucking the trend customer behavior, even though us as dealers, we've tried to let's say current with what else is going on. And you can go all the way back to like Saturn, right? Saturn had this idea of just take the negotiation out of it, one price, and they failed miserably. And still, to answer your question, I mean, it hasn't changed much. I mean, it really hasn't. The consumer's doing more research than going out driving and getting the brochures,
right.
Like they used to. So that part of the behavior, like, it's changed all of our lives. Google it, and and there's really great tier 1 websites where you can go and you can play with colors and do this stuff. But the general customer behavior is stuck. really stuck. I mean, it's okay. We know how to do it, but end to end, buying a car and having it come to your living room is less than 1% of our business, and we offer it. I mean, if you call and and even during COVID, I mean, people that wanted to come in, we put the car in the parking lot, and they drove it with no salesperson and so on. So to answer your question, I mean, it's moving really, really slow, and I think that some of these companies that are out there that are trying to break into it, we'll see, but people like to see that car, they like to see them colors, they like to smell that, they like to look at, it's a treat, I guess, for some people. Some people stress about it, and some are like, looking at this, all these available options, and they and maybe it's just too intimate still. Like there's certain things you just wouldn't buy online, because that's really what you're doing, right? I still, I don't know how these people buy clothes online. I guess I've never returned stuff like that, but the car seems to still be in that intimate place where the scratches, the feel, Now, if you're driving a blue Honda Accord and you're going to get another blue Honda Accord, and it's just going to be the end of a 3-year lease, and yeah, you're probably more likely to just, drop it off. But it hasn't been working that way. And these companies that are out there, working on it, that are offering end-to-end use and so on. And Nissan's really aggressive with it right now, but the behavior is still, what's your best deal? And
it's one of those things. It's sort of like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I don't mean to sound like an old school person, because clearly technology has had a huge impact on our business, in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Not to negate that, but there's still basic fundamentals of what it means to complete a transaction, right? And most of our clients are saying the same thing. 1-2% of their business is being handled online with a delivery, like very small numbers, even though if you were to open up Automotive News any week, it's like it's online retailing. Everybody's pushing, for us to, for the business to move into this, online transaction, car delivery, seamless, the whole deal. But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes people forget that people are still fucking people.
Well, if I sell 500 cars in a month, I don't sell 2 for the same price.
Right.
Not 2. And it's that, maybe it's the last of the Mohicans. It's from the negotiation standpoint. I don't know, but it's anyway, it's not changing, and so technology, we can expedite the delivery, right? I
sure.
mean, that continually is trying to get quicker. A lot of it's done. You can send your credit app in prior to you.
You got a lot of the legwork and the way people are coming into the business, coming through different technological challenges. But still, at the end of the day, the bulk of your business is you're delivering cars to people who are in your face.
And they will get quotes from third parties, right? And let's say either get a quote from a TrueCar or whatever, and then they just want to come and grind on that. It's like so maybe it's just giving them that starting point, that baseline, but. The places where we offer pricing, like direct, already negotiated pricing, we don't transact at that price either. There's a bone. I wanted this. What else can you do for me? And so on. So it's if you walked in a showroom versus 20 years ago, you're going to hear the same word tracks, the same comments. I'm not buying today. We're just looking. Right. Honey, don't tell them anything. Don't tell them you're being really. I see it.
It's the same stuff.
And there's a desk, like literally from probably I could throw a tennis ball and hit the customer, right? So there's a desk right outside my office.
Yeah, I know.
And we have, I think at Honda they must rotate like 2-3 different guys per desk. We have a lot more salespeople who do desk. And so I get this, I hear what's going on, and I just laugh, and the customers are like, that's it. I'm not coming back. That's it. I've been, and I just take it in. Sometimes I'll walk out there and, inject myself into the deal, whatever. But it's the same stuff for the most part,
And for all the people that, that have something negative to say about the car buying experience or the car business, I think there's 10 times more people that actually have had a good experience, and that to some degree enjoy the process of going back and forth and trying to get a deal on their car. I mean, it's not the terrible experience that everybody makes it out to be. I mean, occasionally no matter what you do, you're gonna go to your favorite restaurant sometime and you might have a shit night there, right?
Well, customer satisfaction scores, which we have to keep up with, are still, the surveys that go out, they want, I think the average is like 98%. So 98% would recommend the dealer. 97, somewhere between 80 is like horrific, right? You'd be in trouble with the manufacturer. So north of 90 are completing a survey that says they'd recommend the dealer and they had a good buying experience. And that's in 90, you have to get let's say a 5 on a 1 to 5. You know, you have to get the best score. And so, yeah, you know, it's not. And if the customers, us as dealers, we'd give a fair discount, a fair number on their trade-in, and they could be in and out in 15 minutes with the pricing. But, you know, it's really the consumer behavior that still drives this little bit of madness that goes on, you know?
Yeah. Interesting. Let me ask you, now that you've been successful for years and years and years and years in this business, and I would imagine as you've matured and aged to whatever degree you want to use that word, I'm curious to get your perspective on what success means to you now as opposed to what it may have meant to you as you were coming up. You know, now you're in the position that you're in your life right now. Like, what does it mean? What does success mean to you now?
Well, you know, I'm at that, you know, I'm north of 50, and, you know, all that, your perspective on everything starts to change. I'll tell you that for sure. So health, you know, and taking care of myself, you know, which something I just abused my body. I drank too much. I'd jump off a freaking cliff, and I barefoot ski and all this stuff. So I abused myself. So now one is like, if I feel good and I discipline myself with what I'm doing with myself, that's huge. So health has become like something I never even used, right? I mean, like, either you felt like crap or you didn't. And so that part of it. 2 kids that now I can see, like, you know, are definitely my biggest accomplishment, right? And I say 2 kids, I say accomplishments because I put a lot of work, you know, and discipline and to, you know, these last 20 years of raising my kids. So that part of, like, watching that success now blossom, their work ethic, and so on. So that's a part of, like, you know, like something now I'm watching, you know, reap the benefits of my labor. And, you know, and I consider myself, like, when I see things, like I see their work ethic, I'm like, you know, that's success to me now. Like, I wouldn't say living vicariously, but I'm definitely enjoying now that you know, that fruit of my labor, and helping people. I mean, you know, for people to tell me, you know, like, you know, man, what you did for me or how you helped me, you know, made a big difference. Like, that is, you know, all the way down to, like, just being, you know, I focus every day on being the best version of myself, and I'm realistic where I let myself down. And so this personal accountability, and knowing that, you know, I mean, I did it today and I did it yesterday, and you know, my reputation, you know, how people view me, like, has become a much bigger part of how I live my life today versus, you know, 20 years ago or whatever. So you know, that's people talk about that, you know, but I'm really good at, you know, now, you know, kind of self-grading myself and, you know, knowing where I didn't, and, you know, it's and sometimes it's invisible to everybody else but me, you know. I'm still the one that says that was half-ass, or how you handled that, or you should have gave that person a hug, or you should have given them more time, they needed more time. And you know, it still creates some anxiety, that little bit of looking back from, you know, the day before, but it's financially, you know, I'm obviously better, not obviously, but I'm better than I've been in my whole life. And so that's not, you know, at the front line. I mean, it still gets me up every day, and I still enjoy, you know, I'm working in a business for profit, but it's definitely not at the top anymore. You know, being healthy and being just a good person, you know, makes me feel better than a big paycheck now. And it's not, you know, I mean, to be a better person in my 50s than I was in my 20s, I have to lean back on every mistake I made and the things I'm supposed to be, right? You're supposed to be. You're so, you know, if you run a construction company, you're supposed to be a better guy at 10 years at doing it than you were, you know, you're supposed to be better now than you were then. And so my expectations are to be a better person, be a better leader, be a better mentor, be a better communicator, have more empathy, you know, words I didn't even know what the hell they meant, you know. So I let myself down on certain days, but also I get that success, you know. So, you know, I kind of take it like, all right, you can do it today, you know. And I have some. I don't know if I'm not gonna share this until I see it. But I know what I have on it. But it's the first thing that comes up on my phone, and it's, you know, confidence continues to confidence. Because as you get to a place where you already kind of itself there, you know, now, you know, I want to continue to build confidence in everything that I do, and honesty. And I'm not a liar, but I don't consider myself just somebody that makes shit up, but I want to just be, when I say honest, I want to be transparent. You know, if you said to me, "Are you having a good time doing this?" You know, and I'm not, I want to be able to say, "No, Chris, I'm not." You know,
right?
You know, and kindness, being quiet. Quiet to me means talking less, listening more. I'm a talker, so I'd like, it's just, these are things that if I can check these boxes at the end of the day, humble and sweet, those are my improve in, and they're not something that, there are obviously things I feel like there's room, there's still a delta there,
right,
that, I could improve in, but it's not, 15 cars today, right? That's not, there, but not on that list anymore, and that list would have been totally different, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So really focused on, and what's cool is the better I get at it, I've realized the better I'm teaching it. So, you're supposed to get wiser as you get older. So these things that these real core competencies I just listed, I also spew that when I talk to people. When I talk to car salesmen, I had a little sales meeting yesterday, I haven't had one in a long time. I said, let's just be good to people. We're talking about fixing customer satisfaction. So I walked in on a meeting, and I very rarely go to sales meetings, and they were talking about our customer satisfaction score was down like 2 points. And I'm listening, and the sales manager, and it's on the showroom, and the sales manager said, anybody have anything to add? And they didn't even know I was there. I said, I got something to add. I said, forget manipulating this number. Just treat people great.
Mm-hmm.
Just be really cool with them. Be sweet. Understand that they're struggling with this car negotiation and so on, and more than that. And I said, and I gave them this level of empowerment, which I think is huge. I said, if somebody goes home and they call you and they're upset in their brand new car and they say there's a scratch, and maybe they scratched it when they got home, maybe they didn't, maybe it was here, fix the scratch. And you have the autonomy. I said, I'm giving you the autonomy to do that. And if anybody here, and any of these managers have a problem when they come to me, but make good decisions and just be great to people. Forget manipulating. I don't say manipulating, but like trying to manage the score. How about if we just are great to everybody? So those are things that I would have managed the score years ago. Not just see things clear. Just be good guys, be a good car salesman, take their calls. If they're upset, get involved. And so those are things that will make me a better person. And then, I'll be a better leader, and I'll be a better teacher, and I'll be a better coach and a better parent. And so I see the residual of all that.
Mm-hmm.
How I manage, how I speak to people is different. I'm not, before I'd bring you in my office and it was about getting you pumped up or getting you motivated. And now I realize if I can just get you looking at things differently, it's a long-term fix. It's not a juice. It's not a, it's not a double espresso.
Yeah,
it's
that super rah go, and then everybody gets so focused on like this thing that they feel that they need to accomplish that sometimes when you're talking about salespeople and working with people, they're not, or you or I are not fully present in the moment of just working with that person and listening and letting that kind of natural ease go.
Yeah.
Because somebody is thinking like there's an agenda and I got to get to the next line, and what if they say no to this, and then you create this tense situation that ends up going shitty for some people. When at the end of the day, what you're saying is, hey, just like slow down and like listen and
just
be cool.
Be like,
be present.
And I have it even another level. Like I have a manager the other day that kind of. Let's say I handled a situation with a salesperson that I just thought, let's look at the big picture. So the sales manager's young, the salesperson was old, and I say older, a lot older, and you're selling cars and you're still beating that pavement and you're in your 60s. Like, that's a different world, right? And
mm-hmm.
So this young sales manager's like, you go home for the day and so on. And that's typical, right? I mean, we do that. Somebody has a hard time, they're late, we may give them a day off and, rethink whether you want to be here. And let's evaluate that. I told him, let's sit down and talk about that. Like, if you're still banging the pavement and you're in your 60s, like, probably some shit went wrong, right? And you're struggling. And whether you're happy but something is still, even if it's just your body, right? Even if it's your knees aren't
feeling so good.
And so deal with that differently. Don't deal with that the same way you would deal with a 21-year-old kid who's, stayed up late playing video games and now he's late for work, And get to know your audience, get to know your people, and I'll make you. And just that one situation, it was like a wow moment. I'm like, think about that, man. Think about who, and it wasn't a big offense. It was just some typical stuff. But managing through that individual, like you said, as a person at a time, and teaching them to be. And he was like, wow, I could have just been really nice. I could have handled it totally different. I could have bought him lunch. I had another young guy the other day that I have young people working for me, and he was, just pointing out the negative or being shitty, and I'm like, what about buying lunch? My point was, you're ultimately just want to get something accomplished, right? So when you tell somebody, you do this way, and like you're the end in mind is, I want to get them to do this way, but it doesn't have to come to that. A lot of it can be solved with love, and empathy, and getting to know somebody, and then they'll perform for you. In my opinion, a lot of times that other part don't even work. If you got to manage somebody that way, they probably don't need to be working for you. And I spent some time with Sean, Sean Wolfington, right? So
Sure.
I spent a year with Sean and helping them, kind of get operational with the company they're running today. And it was, first it was like outer space, right? I mean, we'd have these, we'd be in full on productivity. And, Sean would call what he called a family meeting. And we just come and people be on beanbag chairs and shit, and and we just start rapping. I'm like, man, this is insane, right? This is like a productivity killer. Like, what are you doing, man? I just at first it just rolled my eyes, like, oh man, him and these freaking family meetings or this. And I just went on to see the culture, and then the culture obviously was obvious, right? I mean, we had candy and stuff, but then what I saw the synergy. And I saw the loyalty, and I saw no turnover, and I saw us not paying people a lot of money, and I realized, man, that was just, there was a lot to be said about that. So I took a big takeaway from that, and he managed and ran, and he's a stud. I mean, he's very disciplined, and he's not just a flowery operator, but he understood the power of like kindness and love and compassion and empathy, and and we paid people less, and they did more, and they stayed late. And, we were startups, so we couldn't overpay anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody had to kind of be along for the ride. And I took that away after I spent a year with those guys, and something that was like, I was still a car dealer, like I remember the first day I was there, and I dropped an F-bomb, and Sean comes over to me, and I'm a car guy, and
right.
and I dropped an F-bomb on somebody, and he's like, isn't there a better way to say that? And I do it today, but for the year I was there, I never did again. I started to, be able to, understand how you can get things done without being aggressive and so on. And I don't know how we got on a topic, but, I had to give Sean a shout out because that was a lesson. And I guess that's that's another little piece of my DNA, not my management DNA,
right.
And when you do that and you operate that way, you kind of earn the right to be aggressive when you need to be. Like, look, we've been having family meetings and we eat candy, and and we're we just have a really chill environment. But this is bullshit.
Yeah, this needs to get done
today. And,
yeah,
and you didn't feel like that's just him being aggressive again. You realize I want to get back to where we were and out of that headspace. But he earned the right to do that. And I find myself now being that operator. Like, I'm empathetic. I'm compassionate. I give you quality time. I have a company that I really protect the culture, right? So if you step out of line, I've earned the right to like square up with you, and then you need to respect. And I find that, like, you got it, boss. Like, you're right. And it's more of like, we do this every day. We don't. He kind of like, he don't ever act like that. So if he acts like that, he's serious,
right?
And it becomes it's a better version of me, And I at the end of the day, I get more done, and I get better results, and I get more loyalty, and I get more productivity. So it's not it's just a well-rounded. I would say my management style now is much more well-rounded and less predictable.
That's cool, man. It's good to hear.
And it's fun. It's way more fun, It's way more enjoyable, to get yourself worked up, and managing through the other side of it, and it is. I leave the office feeling a lot better, and you're still doing a whole bunch of business. So, and people love being there. Our turnover is way below the industry average, and I believe that when you call somebody and you say, and I'm very focused on it now because of what's going on,
mm-hmm.
and you can't hire no people, but I have all the employees I need right now. So my focus is, let's take care of them, and we won't get involved in this situation where where no one wants to go to work. Yeah, exactly. I mean, no company, everywhere I go, there's hiring signs and so on. So the best way not to participate in that is not to create the problem. And so let's say I need 400 employees, I have 400 employees in all these departments. Let's do everything I just discussed, and then we won't be involved in this hiring mess that's going on in our
mm-hmm.
country right now. So I don't plan on participating in that.
Good. Yeah. Same.
I could see you, here. I mean, these people don't want to go somewhere else and enter the workforce. I mean, you're fair and you do your thing. I've been around your culture here, and you're not going to be involved in, we can't hire good people. You just got good people. You cultivated them. You don't need to participate in that. I'm sure most of these companies that are looking for all these people didn't have the culture in place, and that's why they're looking for all these people.
Right now, now they can't get people to come in.
No, they continued that culture of turnover. So they've relied on that. People were looking for jobs and they were constantly turning over. But, unless you grow your business and you continue to do that, your needs can be met with the people you have. And that whole phenomenon that's going on with people getting too much unemployment and they don't want to go to work doesn't affect us.
No.
It affects the people that didn't take care of their people in the first place.
Yeah, we've got a great crew here. Great, I really am very blessed to have the people that I'm surrounded with. It's special, and having done the podcast and done the first 16 episodes with each member of our crew, and to really get to know them better and understand.
What a great move, for you too.
It was really just like, I'm just going to practice, right? Like, we're going to do this, and we'll practice with the crew here. I don't know that I had any like specific motivation other than, well, it just makes sense for us to do it here and get to know each other. But through that process, it made it so clear to me how interesting and diverse our crew is.
Yeah, and I watched some of them. You guys didn't talk about advertising,
creativity, but a lot of it all fundamentally comes back to the same things, sort of this feeling of what's important in life, family, gathering, food, wine, the traditions that people have that bring people together of all races, colors, creeds. It doesn't matter. Almost every conversation ended in or found a way into that area to some degree. And it just, I remember one day I was sitting here having a conversation with someone, and I looked out and I saw, there was like 10 people. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon, 10, 12 people who were working here, all gathered in the kitchen because somebody had cooked something at home and brought it in, and they were all sharing it. And I was like, that's the greatest fucking thing I could see, I'd rather see that, not all the time, of course.
Right.
But, a part of the time that we're here, that's what I want to see. That's why we have the environment like this, to give people the opportunity to share more than just, hey, we work together.
Well, think about what you just said. So you get it. You get it. I've been here. You get it. Doing these one-on-ones, like, I watched some of them, and like when I would take over a company, I would get a list of all the employees, and I really wanted to like bring them in, bring Joe in, bring Tom in from parts and so on, and COVID got in my way of that, but of this current company. Mm-hmm. But you just learned all this stuff. I used to be a disc jockey. I used to, and so on. But when you see that, what you just talked about, right? Them, someone bringing in, meatloaf and everybody, somebody, the wrong guy, looks at that and says, you guys get the fuck back to work. What the hell is this? So, and you're looking at it, not just as that they're not working currently, but they're actually, you're actually cultivating something big. And so you look at it with like, wow, this is awesome. And a complete opposite operator would look at it like, what the hell are you guys doing? So not only are you allowing it, you're encouraging it, but you also see that you see what, what that does, what that does for, for them. And you're not going to have someone calls one of your employees just knowing the little I know, and they're going to offer them X amount more next year, or come work for me. They're not even taking a call. There's surveys out there, oldest time that say, money is secondary to how you feel every day going to work. And I think at some point, that delta's got to be met. But
well, yeah, but it's gotta feel good. It's after all this time of doing this, and having clients, losing clients, picking up clients, and then having good months, bad months, all the financial stuff, that's all great. Like, the financial stuff has to happen. But I can still tell you, if we create something for you, or we create something for another client, and they're like, oh man, this is fucking great work. It worked, it generated results, or, we've gotten a lot of calls from friends or peers, and they saw this work, and they really, we got a lot of positive feedback. I can't tell you how much still to this day that feels better then don't get me wrong, the money's great, but like when you get that feedback, and everybody in this business is very much like that. We're all sort of, creative people pleasers, and when you get that affirmation that what you did worked or was well received, it's a big plus. And so trying to create that and nurture that in the culture here with each other as well too is
and we're cool. In a profit business, and so I did some statistics when I did a presentation. I think it might have been a Cardone's deal. And the highest turnover in the fast food business, the only one that outpaces the car business as far as turnover goes. Highest turnover in business is fast food. Obviously, no one goes there for the most part to stay there. So the highest turnover is McDonald's, right? And McDonald's pays the most. Then you have like Burger King, and then you have, but I did this whole study on it. So Chick-fil-A falls 5th on the pay scale. So there's 4 other places you can go and fry a piece of chicken for more. And obviously we all, I don't know obviously, but I read Truett's book and how he believed that the culture would not only retain people and be a good feel, but also you don't have to chase that money where they're almost like paying them to be there, right? So McDonald's has to pay more than Chick-fil-A. And what's the difference? The difference is that Chick-fil-A, it feels good. They treat you with respect. All the other things. And there's a whole book, a great book, if somebody wanted to read Truett's book, short read, that just talks about. So we are in a profit business, and we do get away. We don't have to pay hostage pay because, we're running a good operation. So we just pay fairly. And we don't have to pay for you. Come on, you want to work at McDonald's, we pay more than everybody else. And they still have the highest turnover. And Chick-fil-A with the 5th on the pay scale has the lowest turnover.
It just goes to, there's more to why people go to work every day than just pay. Of course, everybody's here to make money, to provide for themselves or their family. We all do that to our varying degrees. But it's just, it's about more than that, for people who are fortunate enough to have a choice to make that decision, right? Like not everybody has the choice to
sometimes you got to work somewhere you don't want to work.
Exactly, like that. And that's just the reality of it. And we've all been there at different phases in our life as well too. But at the end of the day, when you can get into something that you enjoy, you're compensated fairly, and the culture is good, and you enjoy the people that you work with, it makes such a difference.
If more people realize that, business owners, they'd realize that, I can minimize my turnover. I don't have to pay an excessive amount of money, and it just feels good coming to work every day. And like I said to you, I didn't even realize that was my claim to fame, call it, right? That I was having all this success. I didn't even know. I was being me, being assertive, being passionate about us being successful,
right.
But until I recognized that it's a huge value. And once you recognize it, then you start to identify it, and then you start to dial into it, and then you say, what else can I do to make this, this culture, where the better it is. And I say that culture dictates behavior, and behavior dictates results. The problem with most businesses, they want the results, and they want to delegate the results, or they want to demand the results. And culture, behavior, you got to have the behavior to get the results. But that's like, I'll talk to business owners and like, what's the culture like in your company? I don't know what they eat, like shit like that, right? So, but it's free, and it feels good, and I'm really passionate about that, and I believe it goes all the way down to, to raising your kids in a culture that is, if you want to implement things, inject things into their life as they get older, and you don't have the foundation, of how they were raised, let's say, whether it be, with following rules or like we had talked about, a lot of love, and then when you get mad, you get really mad, and so on, or you get the respect, and then you can implement things along the way. I've realized because they have the tools, and they're receptive, and when I would speak at these conferences, and I remember speaking at 10X, and people had notebooks of shit like this big, right? And I said, what are you going to do with all this stuff? You're going to take it back to your company, and you're going to try to input it into a bad culture, and it's going to fail. So I said, take this shit, all this good stuff. It's all good stuff, right? I mean, there's a bunch to learn there. Go back to your company, put it on a shelf, focus on creating a culture. Then you can put this stuff into it. It's a foundation is the way I would term it. Like you're trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation that's this big, and and the first bad economic situation is boom.
Yeah.
So I want to build a foundation that I can just keep adding to, and we're going to try this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to build this. And so, but I recognize I don't have the foundation for it. I can't go any further. So I got to leave them other two things on the shelf until I have that foundation there.
Dude, the foundation is, there's been so many times in my life that I was like, by this age I want to have the foundation done. By this age, and I'm still tweaking it. It's like till
you die.
It's pretty darn. I feel like foundationally pretty close. Still a couple little tweaks and adjustment. And I'm talking about all of life, right? Like business, marriage, kids, all that stuff. Like, okay, it's all there, but I'm like, no, I got some cracks here. We got it. There's some things that we have to solidify in order to go fucking crazy high. Because I still want to go.
You got to have that foundation.
But that foundation has to be there.
And if the vision is bigger than the foundation, you got no shot.
Yeah,
done. If you have a big vision, you have to have a big slab of cement to put it on.
Well said, man.
I wanted to share something I was thinking about on the way over here. So as being a young dad, right? So you have this time where you're parenting now, right? It's manners, right? It's all these things that really important in parenting. And then you get through this cycle, this phase where, and this is something I just dealt with. That's why I just thought it was, cool to share it. So you get to this phase, like 8th grade, 7th grade, and then it's just kind of this cruise, like how much parenting do you really do through high school? Stay away from drugs, and don't drink and, and whatever. But there's not a lot that went on. It kind of pauses, after like that first initial, like ingrained in work ethic and respect and so on. And then you kind of just look at the report cards and, and you make sure they're not going down the wrong track. So parenting took a big pause, right? And then college for my kids. And then it was another pause, right? So you're a freshman, then you're a sophomore, and then you're a junior. And so it was idle, especially with the kids not, my daughter not living at home. And so this wasn't a lot I did. She needs money. Advice, even at that age, that them asking for advice is minimal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember my son saying to me, "Dad, I graduate next month." And I'm like, "Holy shit! I'm gonna go back to parenting again." Because the parenting between a sophomore and a junior was zero, right? I mean, just dealing with day to day, and now it's like you're about to go. I'm about to put you in the real world. So now he's got all these questions again. This and that and work and his own taxes and all this other shit. So parenting for me now at 20, being 22 is like full on again, like full on. Careers are coming up and direction and all this shit. So it just was like, almost I thought I'm done. And then I remember that day, like I graduate next month. What does that really mean? Well, shit, that means you are done with school. And you're about to start your life with all this stuff. We got to put all this together now. Yeah, he didn't have a plan. They didn't have a plan. I mean, how do you have a plan? And
did it feel good in a way to be able to re-engage that way and be valuable?
Somewhat. I was a little tired, So. And my son is, got into my industry, so it's been like, I hide from him sometimes, because if he catches me, then he runs the day down to me, like, what do you think about this? And this guy did this, and then this girl came in late. I'm like, and so now it's like, I'm just transparent about like, all right, dude, you got a half hour and you got to get out of my room, I'm about to watch some Netflix or some shit. So, and he'll find me, I love it. And then what happens is I'll hide from him, right? Or I'll cut him short. And I just had it, a day, and and it's just, and then I'll, let's say go watch some TV or something. Then I feel guilty, right?
I'm finding the same thing even with like the kids when they're so little, because you like when you're around the house and they're around, they want your attention and you're trying to get shit done and your mind's on stuff. And I my son Nicholas, who's just over 1, he's constantly like pick me up, And sometimes I'm like, Dad, hold on, I'm doing some stuff. And then I'm getting so much better now. Just stop and be like, wait a second, dude. This little guy, like, he needs you, right? Like, he, for whatever reason, like, he just needs that pick him up, hold him, make him feel okay for a little bit, and then sit down and play. He just needs that regularly right now. And so stop thinking that anything else that you're doing is more important than that. It's not. Like, this is one parenting window right now. I got to provide a level of comfort or something right now, where even still, sometimes I'm like, man, I'm fucking, I'm doing something here, right?
Well, my fear is, so let's say he's living with me maybe another year, right? And he's starting into business. And then that goes away, right? So my fear is like, let's say I go upstairs and I'm like, all right, enough for today. I'm thinking, oh man, this is gonna haunt me. Like he's gonna be gone. I'm thinking, man, that day, remember he was here and he wanted all that knowledge.
Yeah,
and
I could have given it to him.
And I was just, half-ass into it, and letting other priorities or whatever. So then I guilt out. Then I go find him, and then he's like half asleep, and and I'm like, hey, we were talking about whatever. But it embeds this like a little bit of guilt, But I am full on now. Both my kids are, both just graduated, so he was slightly behind her, and now it's daily, and my phone blows up, with just next level of life, questions and this and resumes and what do you think about this letter back to this potential employer, and would you read it and proof it? And again, I was just chilling, in school, just like send money and so on. So I just wanted to share that with you. Yeah. So it goes in these phases, and now it's like as full on as it's ever been. The level of responsibility, like now I have they have the tools, but now I got to make sure I guide them now. And now they're like wide open for guidance. They're just wide open, like, cause I think it hit them before it hit me. That now I'm an adult and I don't go to school anymore, and I don't have that to lean back on. Like, I'm busy, I'm studying, whatever. And so it kind of hit them before it hit me. And now it's hitting me, and now I'm absorbed with, their success now is starting their life, and they're on the right track. And, now we're talking about relationships and jobs and, and 401ks and shit like that, And
all I can say is that it's really awesome that they have you, that they feel comfortable. You guys have that relationship, and that they are pinging all this stuff off of you. I mean, it's good for you. It's good for them. I mean, I still to this day, sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I had my dad to like, pick up and call about some of this stuff.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Especially your dad.
Yeah.
I still called him, constantly. He was one of, there was 2 or 3, I got to run this by them. And it didn't matter what it was, anything. It wasn't business related at that point. It just becomes life related. And your dad was really good at life.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was really good at life.
Real
so
good advice.
There was no question you could stubble him, no matter what it was. And
it might be he didn't have the answer, but it's, typically he did, and typically he said it in a way that just like, I found it to be very calming and relieving. Like,
you didn't get excited, man. And his delivery, and you knew it didn't just, come from the hip. It was like, repeat that again, run that by me one more time, and so, you're going to be that, you are, but you'll continue. And so I'm evolving my role as a parent now. Like, I had to lean in on my son yesterday. He's got COVID, right? And I don't mind sharing this. So he's just not, he has a department he's running, and he's just looking a little bit too millennialish, right? Like, he's just like, why aren't you banging on your team right now as opposed to watching that movie, and he's sick as a dog, right? But, I'm still old school in that sense. So,
right.
I mean, like, I felt like yesterday when I pressed him, because I just, I wanted to change that behavior. I wanted to see the big picture of like, you're young, you're starting your career, you have a team, and I want you on frickin' FaceTime, with COVID and being that guy, and I hadn't leaned in on him like that since he was like in Pee Wee football,
right?
Like that, like sending that text that was like hardcore. I used the word to him like, where you are currently, you couldn't work for me. I'd toss you. And I was like, and that was true and still tough, and I sent it, I'm like, no, you need to hear this. And so I hadn't been that parent in a long time. Mm-hmm. I hadn't been that parent since, again, come on, you can tackle better than that, or very little of that, and here I am having to be a hard ass, not a hard ass, but very direct and very, because these are critical decisions now, critical patterns and so on. And so I feel this almost overwhelming sense of responsibility now, again, to take this next, and I know the step's going to be semi-short, right, as far as the intense part of it,
But, we all need that, everybody needs, a mentor, somebody who's a little bit older and going to put that, that reality on you. I think, I still need it as well too. And sometimes you just need to hear that, and you might not like it. And I'm sure he didn't like hearing that, but at the same time, that's the kind of shit you got to do as a parent,
And if they have the respect, even though they're still, I've noticed, like, I don't think they're listening. You know, I think that, you know, like sometimes I think, am I just being, you know, like, am I is he dialed out? Is he not listening? He's just letting me talk. And
right.
So you know, I'm not quite at your level, but I'm a big lover of music and all genres. And you know, and so I'm down this rabbit hole of high fidelity shit right now, right?
Okay.
And I have a few bucks, so I can go, like, and I've realized, you can go deep.
You can go nuts, yeah.
1 amp you could spend 50 grand on, you know. So anyway, I've got, like, I'm beyond the starter kit, right? I'm you know, I'm you know, all vinyl stuff, and you know, and I've gone, like, I have like 3 turntables in storage now, because you know, you can just keep going up and up and up, and so I'm at a level where it's pretty kick-ass. And so I started to tell him about it, right? And he's like, Dad, we have speakers in the ceiling, you know, we have Sonos. And I'm like, you know, because at that age they probably never heard like real analog music, you know, 2-speaker, true stereo, right? So I go, come on, sit down, you gotta listen to this, you know, it's not Sonos, it's not, you know, it's different, and here's why, and you know, and listen to the, you know, close your eyes and, you know, and hear. So anyway, long story short is I put on Zeppelin, I put on Stairway to Heaven, right? Sounds, you know, amazing on there, right? And he don't say much. I'm like, hey, dick, you know, he's just like, you know, yeah, you know, yeah, I like it, yeah, it's cool. And he leaves. He'd never heard that song, he'd never heard, right?
Right.
So like a week later, I think, he pulls up with his car, right? And he's playing Stairway to Heaven. And because it's such a kick-ass song, it's like, you know, probably, I don't know, probably in my top 3, you know, favorite tunes. And I look at him like, he goes, I know you don't think I listen sometimes, but I'm listening. So he got the song, he got the, you know, I broke it down for him, and you know how that song progresses and how it went against the grain of like writing music and all this stuff. And so, yeah, it was cool. Like, and so now when I'm talking to him and I think he's not listening, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because of the Stairway to Heaven episode.
That's killer.
Yeah, it was, you know, stuff like that. You know, so that's success, going back to that question, right?
There you go. It all comes, it's funny, right? We went into success, and it really came back to your relationship with your kids and being a parent and family, which is where so many of these conversations ultimately lead back to, because that's fundamentally what's important to all of us.
Yeah, you know, my parents are getting older. I'm fortunate to have them there, and so me is, you know, as they get older, obviously your role changes. So, you know, understanding that new role, understanding, you know, things like that, you know, them leaning on me for direction sometimes, things like that, you know, the evolution of it. So either you embrace it, you make it part of your success, or like a lot of people, you just don't, and you don't get it. So, and maybe it isn't for everybody, but for me, like you said, you know, like that part of it, my whole family is here now for the first time in 40 years. I don't know, we've all lived in the same state within. So that's been, you know, like really, really gratifying as well, you know, being able to have that and have a lot of gratitude towards that. And my kids being around their grandparents and so on. So
being able to see each other.
Yeah, but at first I was like, oh shit, they're all moving here. I'm trapped. Like I can't move to Italy when my kids graduate, you know, shit like that. But yeah, I mean, it's my whole life now. You know, we have a family text going on now, and it's constant, and you know, and all that. And I was a jerk, like for a while. Like I guess I was typical, but you know, like work came first, and you know, and I didn't have time for small talk, and I didn't do all that. So again, getting to an age where, and I think it's a natural progression for most successful people. You know, like a guy like Sean probably got a little earlier than maybe I got it. You know, but it should be the way you progress. And some people stay in that, you know, in that place, and they don't affect the world and people around them as they should, maybe, because I tell people all the time now, look, I most of the stuff I'm telling you is just based on stuff that I failed at, or that, you know, and what I have is I just have knowledge just based on trial and error and life in general. So I wasn't born with any of this stuff. You know, I didn't know ABCs when I was born, but I'm passing this on, you know, is just knowledge that I've obtained, and I'm not making it up as I go along, you know. So that's, once you tap into that, it, you know, it becomes really gratifying, you know, and that's why I position myself with all these young people now, you know, because they're watching them grow and learn, as, you know, and I didn't want the same guys, like I said, you know, not that I didn't want it, but it just wouldn't have been as gratifying as, you know, as starting over. And
fresh,
yeah. So I've got to, you know, I'm building a whole new little set of army, you know, and you know, it's cool, you know, when I made that comment yesterday to one of the salesmen, came up to me and And he said, man, you telling us we're empowered to make a decision, man, that's awesome. Like, and I'm not giving them power to put an engine in a customer's car, but I'm giving them power to say, yeah, we'll take care of that ding. Because I said, I don't want to hear nobody tell me I got to check with somebody. I want to make that call to my salesman and say, yeah, don't worry about it. Go to bed tonight. I got it, man. Bring it by tomorrow. We'll handle it. And that little piece, and he chased me to my car yesterday and said, man, that was just, and I'm saying, I go, just don't abuse it. Make good decisions. Make decisions, treat people like you'd want to be treated. And he was just like jacked, and that's not something a young manager would even think of, like, the power of empowerment, the power of letting employees make decisions, because most can't. And if I'm selling cars for a living and I got this poor customer that has a ding and we missed it, and then I got to run them around and nobody will give me an answer, as opposed to saying, yeah, we got it, no problem. Mm-hmm. Great customer experience. Employee, like that alone will retain that employee. Just that little level of autonomy and empowerment versus being in that same job doing it somewhere else. So
people, again, we talked earlier about compensation and recognition and stuff. People also want to feel like they have some control over what they're doing, and that they have a responsibility to themselves and to the organization, and that their decision-making capacity is valued, and that's all part of it, right? So just, and it would be easy for you or a sales manager or anybody to think that saying, hey, you're empowered to fix that problem is sort of like a one-off, like, yeah, sure, of course you are, whatever. But, obviously this guy came running out after you to tell you how much it meant to him,
Well, think about the opposite. We've all been there.
Yeah.
Bad policy, no empowerment, okay? Now I'm running a company, and let's say I'm running a women's clothing store, whatever, and I'm that employee, right? And what do I do when I talk to you? This owner, she's a bitch, I'm sorry,
I can't do
so
anything. That's
what you have. When an unempowered employee, that's how they're representing themselves today. And we've all seen that, all of us, like, she's, just sorry, man, sorry, I can't do it. And basically saying this company sucks and it's not fair what's happening, or, this isn't cool, but nothing, it's out of my hands. And versus the opposite of yeah, we got you. No problem. We'll take that back. We'll, just being fair. So it's not just good for the employee, it's great for the customer, right? It's super for the customer. And I believe it makes people want to be like, if you had everybody saying, run everything by me before you send it out, and be like, man, and then you micromanage their little piece of it, it's all that's bad. Yeah. And it's bad for the client. Yep. Bad for the client. Well, let me check with Chris. Let's just put Chris on the damn phone. I want to talk to the decision maker here,
Exactly.
But your people are all, they're making decisions as we're talking about them. So that's the way you want to do it.
That's the way you want.
Which makes them love working here, which makes them represent the agency well.
Thanks, man.
For sure. Yeah. I don't want, if they can help me, and I'll find that person, right? I mean, I find them people in your company, like, oh, she can make a decision. Oh, he's comfortable with that. So then I just, attract, like Erica, we work with, realize that she's, she's got it together. So Lindsay, her boss, been my friend for years, and Lindsay, you don't call me no more. I got it, So, it's client-wise, a client experience, but customer experience, as well, and just seeing that. And it's just knowing as a consumer, dealing with people like that, dealing with people that say, yeah, no problem, we'll take care of that. And you're like, what? I did a deal, not a deal, but I had experience with Sonos, right? Problem at my house and so on, and the whole house is done. So anyway, long story short, I call, rings 3 times, I get a person on the phone, right? Thank you for calling Sonos customer support, right? And then it was something I needed, and he sent me the piece, and he fixed my problem. We're going to do this. It's not going to last. I'm going to put in the mail this, and this. The next day I bought Sonos stock. I swear to God. I said, there's just no way this company doesn't thrive with that type of customer service, that type of empowerment. This guy was able to make a decision on a part, fix it, and answer the phone on the 3rd ring. They got to figure it out.
Amen to that, right?
I called a stockbroker the next day. I said, buy me some Sonos stock, because that company's going to do well. And it's just recognizing that now. Cuts through the clutter for sure. It's so easy. Customer service is so bad. It's so easy.
It's remarkable. I think, not to go off on a tangent here, but like technology advanced so fast, and the ability for people to catch up with it, represent it, sell it, understand it, service it, build companies that with people that knew the hell what they were talking about. It's just like in the last 20 years to find real good customer service is it's like, oh my God.
Yeah,
half the time
I bought
we're
the
just going,
stock,
oh
man.
my God.
I'm like, this stock. I mean, this is a moneymaker. Yeah, I was blown away. But again, if you go back to like, where the old days, yeah, the work ethic was different, the customer service was different. The guy at the grocery store made sure you liked your cut of meat, all that stuff. And so I say now it's easy. Like it's so much bad behavior out there and so much non-interaction and all this stuff. So to do it the right way, I think it's easier than it would have been with stiff competition and everybody really being a little better, or a lot of people being a little better at taking care of the customer.
I agree. Curious, not necessarily final thoughts, but leading in that direction. As you're at this stage right now, looking forward for you the next 5, 10, 15 years of your life. Like what's in the horizon?
I don't know, man. I'm single, right? So I'm getting a grip on that. Like I had never really been single. I've been probably in a relationship since like 5th grade, right? So a girlfriend, and then and then I was married a couple times and had a pretty significant relationship lately. So I've been single about a year. So that plays into like, if I was, married or whatever, I mean, that wouldn't be, like a big what if, right? So that part of it is a big what if, right? Like, and I'm truly single mentally, like I'm, I have a really hard time committing now to making a date or doing something, because I'm getting better. And I say better, I'm just really enjoying, like my coffee by myself and things like that. So I'm trying to like understand that, because I don't know if that's like a dark road, or there's a good happy medium or whatever. So that's a part of it. I think it's a big part of it, right? I don't want to be alone as I get older. But I also feel like it's like I'm in this establish myself mode, and then a little bit more of a fit, right? These boundaries and how I want, because as you get older, you realize truly that you don't have a lot of time to waste. So you are very time sensitive now to like I am, like this is a wasted day, and and days are different now than they were 20 years ago. So so I'm doing that, and I think so right now it's really understanding my needs, what really makes me happy, where I want to spend my time, and then probably understanding how a relationship's going to fit into that, but a shitty relation, not a shitty relationship, but like just hanging and whatever, to me, like it just I look at it like I'm not good at this, because my body language and my energy is like I'm wasting my time, right. So I'm not gonna, but that's a part of it, continue to guide the kids and watch them do their deal. And then the situation I'm in, career-wise is, I could be until I'm done working. My relationship with the guy I work with is great. And so, just seeing that through, like, really, saying like, we're going to take care of people, and then we're going to see them again, and then we're going to maybe see their kids. And so I hadn't been there, really, so I got a lot of ownership in, the long-term play here as well. So, but life's pretty chill, man. Like I have no real level of responsibility other than making sure the company's doing well. I don't have anybody, super depending on me. So I got to make sure the dog eats every day, and the kids eat.
Right.
They're on their own. But so, this like really, really like I realize sometimes like I could drive right now and get on an airplane and fly, and there's just nobody to check out with. There's as long as business is handled, but that's taken some time to like really, like this anxiety was like, I should be doing something. I should be calling somebody back. I should be doing. I don't do shit. I can dip for 3, 4, 5 days a week, a month, and again, my responsibility is the company. Sure. But other than that, my level of responsibility is myself. To yourself. Yeah, which is it's a little hard to get used to right now. Not hard, but it wasn't something that you were going to get used to in a week or a month. Like it's been a year primarily, by myself, let's say, for the most part. And it's just finally starting to like feel like, it's got its own motion, its own groove. And so anyway, the future is staying in this mindset. And I'm very protective of my peace of mind. More than I've ever been. Like, don't fuck with it, like, right. And don't bring your shit to me. Yeah, just from a guy in on 95, like I ain't going there. I'm not just. I'm back off and put the music on. So the more time you spend in that space, the more protective you are. It's kind of like eating good for like 3 months and then like, man, that cheeseburger is going to jack me up. So, you know, and that's how you stay in good habits. But right now my goal is to continue to mentor these young people at work, run a good company, you know, just run a good company and just do different things with my life now. You know, I'm independent though, at the most part. So what I do with that freedom, you know, I'm thinking through really well. I mean, I spend a lot of time on that, and I spend a lot of time alone, you know, more than I ever have in my entire life. You know, I chill a lot and just alone. You know, I wasn't really ever good at being alone. You know, it just felt like there's something else I could be doing. There's some other activity. There's something. There's a relationship. There's this. There's that. But it's cool once you get there. You know, and I think what happens is you establish, like I said, you know, now what the baseline is going to be, and you know what belongs in your world now. But we spend so much time not even really understanding that. We're just flowing and going and doing. You know, and you don't even realize if things are serving you. And as you get, you know, where I am now, like you can truly identify what's serving you, what's not serving you, what's healthy, what's not healthy, and you know, and it's a way easier way to manage your life or, you know, your well-being. So back to my well-being, right?
Cool, man. Well, cheers to that.
All right, we won't click this time. You too, brother.
Chink,
love you, and thanks for having me,
man. I really appreciate everything that you've brought to my life. I enjoy these conversations tremendously, and we'll have them again.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yes.
All right, buddy.
All right, man. Thanks.